social policy as a discipline, it has been associated with the emergence of welfare states in European countries in the post-Second World War period. The expansion of provision of services in kind, like education and healthcare, and the expansion of transfers to families in poverty in social assistance, or transfers to families to address contingencies like unemployment or illness and so on, are associated with the expansion of social policy as a distinct discipline. The issue of the emergence of social policy within a European context and its translation into a developing country context of middle-income countries and low-income countries poses some interesting challenges. The first one is that the conditions that led to the emergence of welfare states in European countries are seldom present in developing countries. For example, the presence of corporate agreements between businesses, government and trade union, for example, is hardly present in developing countries. And of course, the other issue, which is the financing of the expansion of state provision of services through personal income tax, is again kind of unlikely to be present in the developing countries. So developing countries have the challenge of learning from the development of social policy in European countries, but at the same time adjusting it to the conditions which apply to these countries. I guess one of the important issues of the expansion of social policy in developing countries has always been the presence of a potential conflict between, on the one hand, taxes that go to finance government activities and the provision of services like health, education, and social protection, and of course growth strategies in these countries. So that there has been a tension, certainly for the last kind of 60 or 70 years in terms of thinking development and development policy, a tension between, on the one hand, kind of focusing on growth in the economy, strengthening what is referred to as the productive sector, and on the other hand, how to address the very pressing and urgent needs of the population in terms of health, in terms of education, and in terms of transfers to address poverty. At different stages and for different countries, for example, in the sort of 70s and 80s, there was a strong pressure towards expanding government activity that addresses poverty and vulnerability. But then during the 80s, there was, with the structural adjustment, there was an emphasis on growth and a reduction of the size of the state and the capacity of the state to address social problems. I think we are probably at the point in time today, especially after the 2008 financial crisis, that there is again a new emphasis on expanding social policy in many low and middle income countries. I think the point of this tension between, on the one hand, growth and on the other hand, social policy, I think to a large extent has been resolved. Social policy does help the economy to grow faster. The countries in the world, particularly high-income countries that have the highest rates of growth and the most sustained growth in their economy, also have very strong social policies. Whereas the countries that have very limited provision of social policies at the same time have very limited economic growth. To grow an economy needs an educated labor force, needs a healthy labor force, needs a labor force that can move freely between kind of low productivity to high productivity sectors. And social policy is essential to allow and facilitate that transition. From the turn of the century, there has been a very rapid expansion of programs in developing countries providing direct transfers in cash and in kind to families in poverty, with the objective of facilitating exit, a sustainable exit from poverty for these families. There are very successful large-scale programs in middle-income countries, for example, Bolsa Familia in Brazil, or Oportunidades in Mexico, or the Child Support Grant in South Africa, or the National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme in India. The evidence that we have so far points in the direction that these programs have made an important contribution to reducing poverty in these countries, and also have made an important contribution to reducing poverty globally and helping us to meet the commitments to the Millennium Development Goals. The main challenge is how these programs can be introduced and expanded in low-income country settings. Typically in low-income countries, there is very limited finance to support these programs. There is very limited government capacity in terms of implementing and designing programs of this type. And in many cases, the politics is not very conducive to governing coalitions having a very strong commitment to poverty reduction. In some cases, perhaps the activities of donors that are not as conducive to expanding these programs in low-income country settings, simply because of the kind of division of labor that arises between domestic elites and donor commitments. Now, there are many examples today of countries, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, where programs of this type are beginning to be introduced. I think the main issue with the introduction of low-income of anti-poverty transfer programs in low-income country settings is really to do with their scale. They are perhaps mainly pilot programs that cover a very small proportion of the population in poverty. But we are learning a great deal from the experiences of these countries. And there is, in some of these countries, there is an embedding of anti-poverty transfer programs as a key instrument, not only in terms of reducing poverty, but in terms of supporting development.